Hello, welcome to Lead Tell TV. I'm your host, Brian Kramer, keynote speaker, coach of coaches, and author of H2H. Today's guest is Tamara McCleary. She's the CEO of a well-known agency called Thulium. In this episode, we talk about how you should be thinking about the future of artificial intelligence and what that means for your human brain. How do we measure the R in ROI, and is it different for every client? And finally, with a wide array of all this stuff coming at us, like IoT to AI, from leadership to the future of work, she suggests how you can stay current in all of these areas, especially as we live our lives moving forward. So let's get into it. Here's my interview with Tamara. Oh man, we are here with Tamara. Tamara, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am so excited to be here with my buddy, and we get to actually hang out on a nice little show for Lead Tale here and talk about some cool things that are going on in your world. And I can't wait to get into it. So how about we just get started?
Hey, I'm all about let's get to it.
That's right. Awesome. So first and foremost, I definitely want to talk to you about B2B brands with getting into the ROI of social media, because one of the things that we always talk about in social media and in what you do for clients, which I'd love to actually explore a little bit in terms of what you do. But what is ROI in social media? This is one of the biggest things that people are like, what the heck? You know, it's a different definition every which way. So I'm curious, what's yours?
Yeah, well, I come at from the angle as a CEO, right? So I have a P&L statement to deal with, and obviously our business is social media. So we wouldn't have much business if we weren't producing a return on our clients' investment in social media. So I think social media, the ROI is a couple of things. Obviously, it's growing the business through brand awareness. It's engagement. So creating more engagement for the brand, helping to humanize the brand, helping the brand to tell their story on social media. But really for me, the juice or the secret sauce is revenue. So we track revenue that is driven through social media campaigns and initiatives. And in fact, one of our clients was able to track almost 40 million in revenue driven by social media.
What? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how do you track that, or obviously without going into the secret sauce, but how do you even get 40 million? Even how about 1 million?
Well, that's easy. Really what you're using is you're using your CRM system. So, maybe you're using Salesforce, you're using Marketo, but if you set it up, you can actually track all of your social media initiatives and your campaigns so that, so say someone out there, CMO or a marketing professional, they're going to have to produce to the executive team what their spend got them in business growth, or you can see that budget go away. And we're seeing that in B2B, right? So, I have a heart for the marketer out there who is seeing their social media, not only slashed, but killed sometimes because their marketing budget is cut. In fact, I was talking to someone today whose marketing budget was cut by 2/3. So they have 1/3 left to try to accomplish, right? This whole list of things they have to accomplish in order to drive business growth. So really what we've done to position Thulium is to help marketers actually document, record, and achieve success with building the business. That means revenue driven through social media. And you do that really smartly, Brian. I see companies using social media all wrong. And I think it's because of a misperception. I think that a lot of people went into social media thinking that it was about popularity. But you and I both know, and I think you and I have both experienced this, you can be really popular on social media and have absolutely no one buying. So it's not about popularity. And so I think when organizations are really looking at popularity metrics, when they're looking at follower counts, that's all wrong. They're looking at the wrong thing, and they're being distracted by that which does not build the business, by that which does not drive any sort of conversions or growth in revenue. And so I really, I'm out there all the time trying to educate people that it's not about popularity or numbers. It's about delivering real value. It's about real engagement. And it's about solving problems for people in such an exquisite way that the brand becomes the go-to thought leader in that space.
It's so true that, what do they call it, ego metrics, or there's other words out there for the different things that people love to measure. And I love that you bottom line it to revenue. That is so important, and it's something that actually is a fresh perspective on what business is really meant to do, what marketing and sales and every other part of the organization is meant to do, which is the bottom line, right? And so the fact that you've been able to actually turn marketing into a revenue generating activity is pretty impressive. I am also interested in some of the best practices that you are would love to see go away. Like the best practices that people have, and you're like, why do we still have those?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a fun question. I have to say, the one thing that drives me absolutely bananas is no matter what we say about engaging with your audience, about exquisite storytelling, about content that is meaningful, you still have executives who don't understand social media, who think it's about follower counts, what I just said. And they're like, we need more followers. And I'm like, no, what you need is more buyers, right? It's not followers, it's conversions, it's buyers. And so I think what's interesting is I wish we could get rid of this whole thing about the vanity metrics, right? Which is, how many followers does our organization have? How many followers does, this person who is interacting with us have? How many followers does this influencer have? Because follower counts mean absolutely nothing. They don't mean anything about influence. They don't mean anything about driving conversions. They mean nothing. So if we could get rid of that, and I think the reason that's still hanging around is it's a really old popularity piece, and it has never made mathematical sense. There's no quantitative analysis that says your popularity translates into money. It doesn't, unless you happen to be, a movie star, right? And I mean like a real, not a self-proclaimed personality, but a real personality. So other than that, for the rest of us real people, it's really about the quality of your offering, what problems you're solving, and how you're interacting. You have to be a brand that interacts. And I think that we're not using the right metrics because those are a little bit more difficult to get to versus what seems to be easy, and that's looking at follower count. So if I could get rid of that, if I could banish that from everyone's mind, and I could really communicate that some of the most influential people in the world don't have hardly any followers.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying that there's some people out there that have maybe just a handful of followers and have the influence that you require for some of the campaigns or some of the things that you're doing, or some of the people that are doing extraordinary things out there. That is a possibility, and the follower count or even the likes or the retweets or all that kind of stuff isn't really what it bottom lines to.
Exactly. It's what does this person that's trusted say, and they're trusted because they happen to be an expert and not a popularity person. It's like, in the B2C realm, popularity is everything, but we're talking B2B. So in B2C, okay, yeah, there's a lot of people who care what Kim Kardashian says or does, and they may buy that lip gloss. But in B2B, you don't drive digital transformation within the organization, an enterprise solution sale, which usually, typically, if you look at the sales cycle, the gestation of a sale of a enterprise solution, we're looking at minimum 12 months, more like 18 months for that conversion. That's not going to be something, you may think Kim Kardashian's popular, but no one's going to make a purchasing decision in B2B based on what a popular person has to say, because it's not a trusted advisor. I mean, these are really complicated pieces within an organization. When you choose your cloud migration, it's not because of what Joe Schmo, who has 1 billion followers, said. There's a lot of pieces within that make you decide that your IT department is going to invest in this solution.
Yeah. Well, along those lines, there are lots of different channels there, as you know. There's even new ones like TikTok. And right, like I think it's really just like an animated, what is it, GIF or GIF, whichever one you want to do, on steroids, right? Like it's like a little bit longer, and there you have it. But it's rising, it's doing well, and who knows, right? There's all these different channels like TikTok that all of a sudden they come out of the blue, and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to master this new thing. First of all, have you used TikTok, and do you think that it might be something that could be a B2B contender?
Well, I love your question, because I have to say, you and I, we both have kids. And so I'm very familiar with TikTok, because I think that's the new kid addiction. But for B2B, I honestly think that there are platforms that aren't going to give you ROI, since we're talking ROI. So TikTok is not going to get you ROI in the B2B space, because we have to answer the big question, who's your buyer? Your buyer is not on TikTok for an enterprise solution. Their kids might be, but they're not. And your buyer, by the way, for a B2B enterprise solution is not on Instagram. They are, but they're not there doing business. They're there posting pictures of, the last 10K they did, or a family picture, or a fishing trip. They're not there to get that type of information. So along with platform, we have to look at who's our buyer, who's our target market, and how do we reach them. From all our analytics, Thulium, we're a data and analytics company. All of our analytics show that for the B2B enterprise sell, it is Twitter and LinkedIn. Those are the two platforms. And so if you really had to focus your energies, you could spread yourself thin and be on all the platforms, but then your ROI is tanking. You don't have anything. If you really want to harness that power, Twitter, LinkedIn for enterprise B2B right here in 2020.
I love it. You heard, hey, whoever's listening, you heard it here. This is how it's going down. TikTok is fun, go have fun, but that is not the place where we're going to jam on B2B. And I'm so happy that you said that, because I was feeling a little FOMO, and I have a TikTok channel, but I haven't done anything. I'm sitting there staring at it going, my God, do I really want to do this? And I'm so glad you just gave me permission.
For you and me on TikTok, we would get followers to look at those old people who are doing silly things.
It's so out of my jam. I'm glad that you just said that.
You have looked at it, right?
Maybe one day we'll do it.
We're talking really young, but I think we might have a little niche there, Brian, if we did all the hokey things that your parents would do, and we might get an audience there. But I doubt we're going to sell any enterprise solutions. But it's wild. And there'll be another TikTok, like you said, to your point, and there's always going to be these fads. But I hope this is a balm, a salve to all of those global social media managers out there. If you get called in by one of your executives going, where's our TikTok channel? You can explain to them why you don't have a TikTok channel, because you're there to make them money, which they like to hear, and TikTok is not where your buyer is.
Well, amen. And so I'm going to change the direction just a tiny bit, well, maybe a lot actually, into corporate leadership. So in the last decade, we had corporate leadership that was dealing with and working through this new transformation of social media. Now, social media has been here for a while. You might say it's settled, but maybe you could debate that as well. And now, what I'm curious about is where the next decade is going to go. What is corporate leadership thinking when it comes to decisions that they're going to make and changes and things that might be different from the last decade?
So corporate leadership, with respect to social media, they still don't have it. They still don't understand it. It's been around, but they genuinely, most senior level executives do not understand social media, and most of them, aren't on it that often, or their comms teams are on there for them. And so not understanding social media creates a lot of problems, because when you don't understand something, you usually are making poor decisions. So within that realm, I think we're still behind the 8 ball with respect to senior leadership truly understanding the value and the power of social media done right. And then leadership in general is changing as we have more and more of the workforce that have different views about work. And, as we are looking at more into the gig economy, and we have 2 generations now. We have Gen Z and we have millennials in the workforce, and neither of which are too keen on positional power authority. And what I mean by that is, generations before, if somebody was an executive, you didn't approach them, right? They had this level of authority and there was a little bit more separation. What these 2 generations, and I'm talking younger millennials. Can I be frank here? Some of these millennials out there are not young. So they're not included in this topic. I'm talking about the younger millennial, not the older millennial trying to act like the younger millennial, but the young millennial and the Gen Z are kids still, not those that are in their 30s. Those aren't kids. The kids these days don't see a difference between themselves and someone in an authoritative position. And that is really changing the game for leadership within organizations, because the behaviors, the culture of the younger set is much different. And so what we see is a bit of a culture clash at times. And then, I think part of that, it's not just the generational cohorts. I also think it's age. Don't you think, Brian? Like, didn't you just not know some things until you experienced them? And so I think, we might blame everything on a generational cohort, but I think some of it is just, lack of experience. And but I do think one of the refreshing things about the younger generation coming up, and I'm really speaking to Gen Z now, because those are really our kids that are coming up now, are these Gen Z kids. The refreshing thing is that they want even something different than the millennials did. Gen Z really does care about money. They do care about making money. Gen Z will do a job that makes money that they don't necessarily enjoy because they want the financial security. Gen Z is a generational cohort that is worried about the future, whereas the millennial, really was more about the experience. I know this job doesn't pay much, but I want an experience, or I'm job hopping because I want experiences. So now we have these 2 generations that are very different from one another. And, there's projections out there that actually Gen Z will be the bosses of the millennials.
Wow. So here we go.
So Henry, your son Henry and my son Parker, they'll be the bosses of the millennials. Maybe those 30-year-olds out there right now. But
I love it.
They're driven differently, and that's the beauty of diversity. Each generation brings with it a freshness. They bring with it challenging the status quo. They bring all kinds of things. I mean, we're Gen Xers, right? I'm making an assumption here, but I assume you're a Gen X with me, Brian. But I think we were the original rule breakers. We just don't get any credit because our generational cohort is so tiny. We're so small, no one ever paid attention to it. We're like the middle child, the latchkey kids. And
thank God social media wasn't around when we were kids.
I'm so glad social media wasn't around when we were in high school and college. I actually think it's a detriment for our kids. It really is. I'm just glad that every thought I had at 18 was not on Facebook.
That would be scary for you and me.
We were spared. We were totally spared.
It's interesting that you talk about diversity. I know that you have a lot of thoughts on diversity, and especially perhaps maybe even around AI, because we've got all the machine learning and AI and all this great technology that's coming. And I'm just curious where you're heading. Where are you leaning towards all this? Because there's also both the light side and the dark side of these things, these awesome things that may not be so awesome maybe in some ways, and they may be great in other ways. Where are you at?
Absolutely. You're spot on. So wise. There's a duality to everything. As above, so below, light, dark. Nothing is all rosy. And anyone who says it is, all of us know in our guts they're not saying the whole truth, because there is a dark side. There's a shadow to everything. There's a shadow to each one of us, by the way. So I think what I'm most interested in moving forward is I'm diving into a lot of attention and work globally on policy, public policy, and ethics around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and genetic engineering, all these nascent technologies that, look, just 2 years ago, well, it was in 2018, November of 2018, we had the first twins, the first babies born that had been genetically modified using CRISPR technology. So, that was November of 2018.
And by CRISPR, I don't think you're referring to like Kentucky Fried Chicken or anything like that. But you want to explain what CRISPR is?
Yeah, so CRISPR is I almost said dummy down, but just to make it just palatable for whoever happens to be watching. CRISPR is a technology where you can go in and actually edit genes. You can actually edit a gene with consequences, right? So here's the deal. Like if you go in to genetically modify an embryo, you also don't know the long-term consequences of that edited gene, right? So we are in the baby, infant stages, embryonic stages of gene editing, and a lot of mistakes can be made. And so there's a lot of ethical considerations because, you look at, did these twins have a choice? And we don't know the long-term consequences of the editing of their genes. And so if we see that that's already been done, we know it's going to happen again and again and again. We're already, the genie's out of the bottle. We're down the path. So we may be, with technology in the future, editing out, think about it. If we're editing out all the little things we don't like about ourselves, you say a couple's going to have a child and they're like, oh, we want blue eyes. We want chestnut hair. We want, my dad had this thing and I don't want that. And my mom had, so if we start doing designer babies, designer humans, we're going to edit out diversity. We're going to edit out all of our flaws, but I would argue these flaws are what make us interesting, what make us individuals, which, we don't want to, do we really want to be perfect? And I don't believe that there's such a thing. I do believe there are consequences that we haven't thought of yet in trying to build perfect beings. So we have that scary piece, why I want to get involved in policy and ethics. But this other piece has to do with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So you look at, the technology that you could have a neural implant implanted, right? Think of Elon Musk's Neuralink, right? So if you have the ability to connect directly into the internet and think about this. You no longer have this. See, we're augmented already, okay? Because none of us want to leave without this. If you have a question, you immediately get an answer. So we're augmented already. Let's not kid ourselves. But this is the next level of augmentation where you don't even have to have an external device. You can just know, which means theoretically that you could be omniscient to a point. Like you could know whatever you could possibly access on a computer.
It's like the Matrix.
So I would say to anyone watching, Brian, how many of you, if you were offered the ability to get a neural implant so that you would never lose your memory and you would be incredibly smart, how many of you would get it? And then it's not, those of you who are like, no way, I want to tell you the minute that one person says yes way, you're pressured to do it. Because the minute the first person augments themselves is the minute the rest of us can't compete in business or in education, or in fact, that's going to disrupt education. How's a professor supposed to teach students who already know everything, right? So we are creating what I believe to be another species of human being. We are creating augmented humans. And in creating a new species of human, are we ready to live with the consequences of our actions? And so, you know, a lot of people might go, oh, Tamara, that's so far off. And yes, it may be so far off, but if we don't start thinking about these things now, it's going to be too late when we're like, oh yeah, it's in our present day. It's too late. So these are the things we have to start discussing now. And to, you know, the other piece with public policy and ethics is we will have a wider divide between the haves and the have-nots. And mind you, it's going to be a very, very small subset of individuals who will have the power to make decisions because everybody else hasn't been involved or doesn't know enough to be involved. And so I'm just afraid we're not going to like the tomorrow we wake up in unless we all wake up now and start becoming involved in these conversations. And I mean everybody being involved, you know, from average citizens, because right now the only people involved in these conversations are scientists, people involved in, you know, AI, engineers. We all need to be involved in this conversation. And I think sometimes people feel left out because they don't think they can talk about these things. But I would really like to bring these subjects to a lay conversation, to get people thinking, get them involved so that we're not lulled to sleep and distracted so that things happen to us instead of us being engaged in creating our future.
Whew, I think that right there was a TED Talk. And if anybody is like, hit pause, go back, watch that again, and get involved. I totally, yeah, my head just completely went. And you know, it's interesting because there's so many different aspects to what you just said. Like you could thin slice so many little aspects of like what it means to be chipped, or what it means to be, what AI level we're going to have, and where is the light, where is the dark, and how we're going to define each of these different things that could be a part of our lives, and how are we going to interact? What does an interaction with another human being look like? Do we even interact, or should we just I'll just plug my head into yours and we could just or maybe no plugs needed. We're all wireless. You just use Wi-Fi, or is it Bluetooth? I don't know. It doesn't matter because we won't have to talk. We'll just look at each other like this. And it's going to be interesting. And I would love to see that as a TED Talk because that would be an amazing thing. Did you ever think that you would be, I mean, you've been in business for yourself now for, God, your entire career. You've been an entrepreneur most of your career. And I know you also have a medical background. And for those of you who are watching that don't know, she has an amazing, lots of layers background and many different aspects. And it's like one day I want to write your resume or help write it because it would be amazing. But what was the original spark that led you to build your companies or start on the path you did to get you to where you're now talking about this kind of stuff?
Well, I'm a geek, and I'm insatiably curious, and I was raised by, my late father was just this amazing inventor, entrepreneur. He, the highest education he finished was he graduated high school. He never went to college. He was a brilliant man and made all kinds of fun, awesome inventions. And he, we grew up in the middle of 6 kids, and we grew up in a family business, all pitching in. And I guess I have that in my blood to want to be an entrepreneur, to challenge assumptions, to create new ways of doing things, to look at things from a different angle and, not necessarily get lost swimming with the crowd. So I think, my dad had a huge influence on me, and I think my patience, you mentioned my background starting out in life, my very first job as a registered nurse, and, really loving that, loving patient care. I love fixing problems. To me, like, I'm the worst friend when you just want to hang out and party, but I'm your best friend when you have a really bad problem and you need to solve it, because I love taking problems and trying to solve them and solving problems for my patients. And, doing trauma nursing and life flight helicopter nursing, I love that, because when you're a first responder in the field, it's not all neat and tidy, and you don't have all the equipment and things that you need. So you just make stuff up and you make it work. And I liked that. And then the problem, lots of my patients were, had cancer. And so that's what got me interested in wanting to go back to school to cure cancer, study molecular physiology, because, there must be something in our environment or something that we're doing that's, causing, our metabolism to go bonkers, And so don't even get me started on our mitochondria and where I think that stems into, autoimmune diseases and cancer. But, I think I love hacks. I love hacking things. I love finding a way around it. And I care very much about people and, the existential question of, like, why are we here? What did we come for? And I believe everybody came for a reason, and everybody has something to contribute. And I'm just wildly passionate about technology and human beings. And I think technology can be used for good. I know I mentioned a lot of shadow, and I'm sorry. There's a lot of positives. And the positive cohabitation with technology will come if we make very conscious decisions, and we are consciously considering our creations and why we're creating it in the betterment of human beings always first and foremost, versus profit for a few pockets.
That's beautiful. So there's so many different things in there that lead me to believe that you're, like, always up. Because how do you stay on top of all that? Like, that's all of these things are constantly growing. It's growing faster than it's ever grown before. I miss 20 years ago when the TV had 13 channels. Wasn't that a nice time? So, it's not that long ago. And now it's like the TV channels are abundant, let alone the ways that we can sell, market, and create companies and look at technology and do all these wonderful things. And yet you come across as though you're staying on top of it, or you're really into this. And I'm curious, how do you both run a company and take all that information in and have time for life?
Well, I'm addicted to reading. I read all the time. And I love to read. And, I'm always staying abreast of, what's new, what's coming out, all these nascent technologies, the applications. I'm really, keen on the practical applications, and then future casting into, well, what's next? Not only the next leap, but I'm always trying to, like a chess move, I'm trying to look 10 moves ahead of what that would mean and what the longitudinal consequences are for X, Y, or Z. And so, I don't watch TV, and I know, I just don't get enjoyment out of TV, so I'm not dissing you if you like TV, but I'm either reading or I'm watching documentaries because I love documentaries as well. And I just I don't sleep a lot, and my husband can attest to that. Mike likes to sleep, and I don't. And I try, I just can't. And I guess my mind is always going, and I don't require a lot of sleep. I have a lot of energy, and I can't explain why. And it's definitely not from caffeine, because I won't show the products, but it's just water, just sparkling water, and that fuels me. But it takes time, Brian. You're right. I think we can get distracted and we can whittle away precious time. And so we have to think about 24 hours in our day and how we want to spend it. And how we want to spend it is critical, right? Because it's about our experience of the 24 hours. And so if you want to experience binge watching your favorite Netflix show, then enjoy it fully, be in it, and don't regret it. But if you say, oh, gee, I don't have time to write my book, and you're binge watching all the time, I'm going to say, well, you do have time. You're just choosing to use your time doing something else. So it's really about owning our time and taking responsibility for our time. And, if there's something that you're not doing that you wish you would be doing, look at all the ways in which we waste time. I love, Brian, I told you I read a lot, right? I'm such a goof. But I love studying successful people. And so I love biographies as well. And I like the autobiographies, and I read a lot about Warren Buffett, and it's really interesting. He's a master of focus, and I think for a lot of the time, the reason we don't achieve things is we have a lack of focus, or we're very distracted. And one of the things that I read about Warren Buffett was he said, he would tell people he was mentoring, write the 25 things down, and I'm getting this number wrong because I'm paraphrasing, but write 25 things down that you would like to achieve or accomplish. And then after you write those 25 things down, he would say, circle the 5, your top 5. And then the person would circle the top 5, and then he'd say, okay, now erase all the rest, forget about it, don't think about it again, put no energy toward the rest, only focus on the 5. And I thought that was pretty wild, because I tried that exercise. It's not easy. I would challenge anyone to try that, because I think what happens is we don't like to let go of the other 20 things, because when we say yes to the 5 only, we're saying no to the other 20. And we have a hard time with that because we want everything. But the truth is, you can have anything you want. You just can't have everything you want. And we hate to make choices, but we have to make choices. And those choices mean that we have time to focus, energy to focus, and that's what will drive success. But not everybody is going to be willing to do that. There's a price for success. And so I absolutely dig his advice. And I think some of the deepest wisdom out there is the simplest, but yet why can't we apply it?
Yeah, right. And I'd say he's a credible source, so I'm going to go ahead and agree with you on that.
Who can dispute him, right? I mean,
yeah, right. So, last question. Just with where you live, in your own backyard, you're in Denver, Colorado, or on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado, and I'm curious, what is that area that you live in? What is it not currently known for, but it should be known for? What do you think is, and if you want to expand on Colorado itself, that's perfectly fine. But what do you think isn't, like, what do you want? What would the rest of the United States need to know?
I think, well, so I'm in the Denver Boulder metro, I would call it. And I would say, I hate to tell you the secret because I really don't want more people moving here. Just kidding.
Let's pretend no one's listening and it's just you and me.
Because if you all move here, our prices are going to go up. But no, I think what's really delicious about the Denver Boulder metro area is that I think we are just as vibrant of a tech mecca as Silicon Valley. Only we are without the pretentiousness of Silicon Valley. I can't believe I'm saying this to you, Brian. You live in San Jose. But hey, my disclaimer is I used to live there. I'm from California. So, and I lived in Silicon Valley during the crazy boom of the 90s and before the crash of 2000. And it was just the vibe there. There's a lot of tech, but the vibe there is money, 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 money. And what I like out here is the vibe is outdoors. It's hiking, it's fishing, it's running, it's cycling. It's very health conscious. And it's not about the car you drive or the title you hold. It's a great melting pot of minds here, even though I think we have one of the highest per capita of PhDs within a square foot of anywhere else, if you look at, Boulder. And yet people are just themselves. There's something about the outdoors here, the cascading waterfalls and the glorious Rocky Mountains, and there's just, I guess, something about the reality of nature that puts all of us in our place. It's very humbling. And so I think the Denver Boulder metro area might even be, we could call it something, Brian. We could call it Austin Light. Does that sound like a beer, though?
It does. It sounds like a little bit of an offshoot. I would definitely say
Austin Light.
It's well, and as you know, I have family there, and so I love that area, and I've got 2 years left here before my son is out of high school, and you never know. You may have just talked me in the final stretch into Colorado, but it has been such a pleasure talking with you. I always enjoy talking with you. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to leave everybody with out of everything that we talked about, anything that stands out, or a final thought?
I just think the final thought is to remember how important you are, and remember that you do make a difference, that you do matter, and you are helping to shape and co-create our future because we are in this together. It's an us and a we, and I hope we can all be a voice for positive change, for technology for good, and for hanging on and celebrating diversity, because what's different about you is what I love about you.
Oh, beautiful. That is a great place to close out. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here today and sharing all of your wealth of knowledge with everybody else. And we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.